I think I hand over to Helen, our co-vice chair, for the Indigenous acknowledgement.
Kia ora, Gib, and thank you. So whilst we will acknowledge from the Aboriginal lands, which is we pay our respects to and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who are the traditional owners and custodians of the land and waters on which we gather today. We pay our respect and honour their elders past, present and emerging. What I'd now like to do is also acknowledge in my native tongue, which is Māori. So, whakakaka te hau te ura, whakakaka te hau te tonga, kia mata te kine te hu, tia matara te ho, te tai, e te atora, te hei, te hu, te hoa, te hei, mori ora. So cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south. Let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. That's beautiful. I would now like to invite Carol Shaw, who is our co-chair of the Asia Pacific NGO CSW 66 Organizing Committee, to give a warm welcome and an introductory remark.
Thank you, Gib, and thank you, Helen, for that. I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land and waters on which we meet today. I live, work and play on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to and honour their elders past, present and emerging. And I acknowledge that sovereignty in Australia has never been ceded in battle or bargain, and that we are on lands that always were and always will be Aboriginal land. I would like to welcome each and every one of you to this Asia Pacific NGO Committee on the Status of Women Forum event. For those who don't know me, my name's Carol Shaw. I'm the current co-chair of the Asia Pacific NGO Committee on the Status of Women and the UN focal point for Asia Pacific Women's Watch. And I've had the pleasure and honour to work alongside so many of you over the last 30 years. This year's Forum Day has two key purposes. One is to share insights into the Commission on the Status of Women 66th session priority theme, achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. And within today's program, we have some amazing speakers from our region to discuss climate crisis, environment and disaster risk reduction. Every year, more than 80 million people are added to the world's population. New records are set in carbon emissions from fossil fuel burning. Global temperature data reveals a strong upward trend, though by most meteorologists, thought to be by most meteorologists to be the result of a buildup of greenhouse gases. Meanwhile, the list of endangered species in every major group of plants, sea life and animals grows longer. Educated estimates suggest that within the lifetime of a child born today, half of the species on Earth will be extinct. In figures released in December 2021, over 57 million people are affected by climate disasters across the Asia Pacific. This is 2021, this is last year. As we gather here today, our sisters in Tonga are dealing with the aftermath of an underwater volcanic eruption and tsunami. The Tonga Hunga-Hapi undersea volcano that erupted produced a blast 600 times more powerful than the bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima during World War II. The aftermath could be felt as far away as New Zealand and Alaska. Fiji is suffering from destructive winds and the growing intensity of tropical cyclones. Across our Pacific Island states, rising sea levels coupled with warmer temperatures and stronger El Nino patterns increase the susceptibility to water and food security, increase the risk of deadly food and waterborne diseases, cause displacement of coastal communities. Ocean acidification impacts on islands, coral reef systems, and fishing livestock. Rising sea levels across the region produce rising tides and the need for many to migrate to higher ground or urban settlements, causing displacement and loss of land and livelihood. As we speak, Australia is under a state of national emergency as severe rainfall on a drought-stricken land has caused some of the worst flooding in Australian history across the east side of Australia. The Philippines, Bangladesh, and Malaysia are also under the threat of ever-increasing flooding. Bushfires rage regularly across Australia. In 2020, the bushfires in New South Wales and Victoria alone burnt an estimated 33.8 million hectares, destroying over 5,900 buildings and killing more than 34 people. When disaster strikes, not everyone is affected in the same way. We know that women and men are disproportionately affected by disaster. In a recent article, it was stated that women are now 14 times more likely to die in disaster than men. Women face an increasing risk of gender-based violence during post-disaster, including domestic violence, sexual violence, forced marriage, and trafficking. The risk of gender-based violence is further compounded when countries and communities are prepared to deal with the impacts of climate crisis and disaster. In addition to the heightened crisis and the heightened risk of gender-based violence, the impacts include health outcomes, much poorer health outcomes, displacement, loss and damage, poverty, a greater burden of unpaid care and domestic work, and barriers to food and water security. In the aftermath of a disaster, violence in all its forms increases and services are severely reduced. The socio-economic health outcomes for women who were vulnerable to natural hazards include prolonged psychological stress, chronic fatigue, malnutrition, lack of education, unemployment, increased poverty, inadequate access to housing, and barriers to healthcare services. There remains in many disaster strategies a lack of an intersectional lens to ensure that women who face multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination are included as meaningful contributors to planning and decision-making on climate change and disaster risk policies and programs. This includes those in our LGBTQI+ communities, women with disabilities, rural women, and Indigenous women. Loss and damage occurs in natural disaster, both economic loss, such as impacts on women's labor and access to financial resources, which affect their ability to manage and recover from disasters, as well as non-economic loss, such as loss of culture, land, traditional knowledge and practices. All this is now happening within the context of the increased pressures that COVID in its many forms has brought to our women and girls. We are tired. We are exhausted. We are exhausted from the multiple and compounding impacts of living our lives, and yet we remain connected to our advocacy for advancing gender equality. A gender lens is essential to addressing the devastating social and economic impacts of COVID-19 and the climate crisis. And we urge our governments to examine the impacts of climate change through a gender lens, to address key barriers to gender responsive climate actions, and to increase the roles that women play in decision-making to close such vulnerability gaps. The emphasis of this discussion happening now in this region is not lost. I stated earlier, there were two areas of focus for this forum. The first, as I've just discussed, was the priority theme. The second is to celebrate that together we stand strong, to celebrate that we as women are pushing the boundaries of gender equality and climate change in our own ways, in our places, in where we stand. We recognize that together we're strong, and together we can be a force to be reckoned with. This year, NGO CSW in New York is celebrating its 50th anniversary. NGO CSW was founded following the First World Conference on Women held in Mexico in '75. Its mandate then was to provide a forum for exchange of information facilitating a cooperation amongst its member organizations, and later assisting the international community in the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action and other UN agreements. Many of us here who've been to New York and presented in the parallel sessions or been trained by the NGO regional trainers or have listened to the information videos will be well aware that NGO CSW in New York has developed and grown and adapted to the challenges of mobilizing movements and sharing information as a key platform for international advocacy towards the promotion of women's human rights, gender equality, and the empowerment of women and girls. So tonight, in the Apollo Theatre in Harlem, NGO CSW New York will be celebrating together their 50th anniversary. In 2005, following many pushbacks and challenges on the global stage, NGO CSW in New York expanded its international presence through the establishment of regional NGO CSW committees. This was the start of the Asia Pacific NGO Committee on the Status of Women. The Asia Pacific NGO Committee on the Status of Women has been supported a long time by the Asia Pacific Women's Watch, and the two organizations have co-hosted and shared many events that you have all attended since then. Historically, across Asia and Pacific, we have had many powerful, amazing, and at times absolutely terrifying activists who have brought light to the darkness, who've allowed the voices from the margins to be heard, and who have brought lived experience into the halls of the decision makers in the UN, in New York, Geneva, Nairobi, and Bangkok. We recognize today those who march to the beat of a different drum, our sisters in Russia who are pushing resistance against the war, for our sisters who march on the streets, and for those who take their struggle to the streets. We recognize the younger women who are using information technology in ways that we couldn't even imagine at the times of the World Conferences of Women. We celebrate you all. I close today by introducing a short 5-minute video to you of those who've inspired us. Some sisters have left us and others we walk alongside. I hope you enjoy this video of those we walk alongside in our journey towards gender equality and justice. Thank you. Gabe, can you shop screen?
Don't force me out of bed in your society. Don't push me down the road you've been down. Don't try to fix my head, it's just your anxiety. Don't hush me now, cause I just wanna shout. Don't make me dance to the tune that you're humming. No, my body don't move like that. Don't make me pretend I don't see your shortcomings. You'll be running when I raise the black flag. Don't force me out of bed in your society. Don't push me down the road you've been down. Don't try to fix my head, it's just your anxiety. Don't hush me now, cause I just wanna shout. Don't make me dance to the tune that you're humming. No, my body don't move like that. Don't make me pretend I don't see a shortcomings. You'll be running when I raise the black flag. Get out your bomb and fly away. We'll be dancing with our hands in the air when I lose all this to the break of dawn. You can't keep me in a cage made of tired ideas. It's rusting out faster by the day. I won't wear your leash, I won't take no deals. I won't stay quiet when there's so much left to say. I'm not buying no ride, just suburban life when there's a fire raging just outside our door.
Thank you so much, Carol, for the video, for the introductory remark, and a very important message about climate change. I would now like to invite Helen, our co-vice chair of the committee, to say a few words on climate crisis.
Thank you, Gib, and thank you, Carol, for showing us some of the incredible women that have been before us and are still with us today in their fight for the emancipation of women. So I have the privilege, and I'm not going to go into too much detail around the climate crisis, and it's around the theme. And for me, the most important part of the priority theme around achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change is the environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. Because without that commitment, where will we be? So in the face of the increasing dire warnings about the severity of climate change, how can we rationally hope for a solution to the problem? Given that the cultural and social changes in store for humanity in the wake of climate catastrophe, we will likely be very dramatic, and we may not be able to retain many of the thick cultural materials we cherish and take for granted. For this reason, the objective of our hope must be relatively indeterminate. I want to leave you with a quote that I found that I thought was really quite pertinent for today. Meanwhile, in the hot, arid world, survivors gather for the journey to the new Adriatic centers of civilization. I see them in the desert as the dawn breaks and the sun throws its piercing gaze across the horizon at the camp. The coolish, fresh night air lingers for a while, and then and that's where we pause. So I'm not going to take anything away from our wonderful panelists that are going to talk and bring their suggestions to the table. But it's just mindful that at the end of this wonderful presentation that we're bringing you today, that we all make a commitment to what we will do to achieve our own climate action going forward. Thank you very, very much. I give it back to you, Gib.
Thank you very much for that inspiring message. A warm welcome again to the audience. It's really a pleasure having you here with us today. My name is Shilshila Acharya. I'm one of the organizing member of the CSW Asia Pacific team, and I will be this MC for the rest of this event. And before I continue, I would like to introduce the rest of our organizing team for this event. So you already met Carol, our co-chair, and Helen, our co-vice chair. So we have Humaira Sarifi from Afghanistan, who will be doing the Q&A session and the panel discussion summary for us. And we have Nalima. I apologize, I think there's an error on the slides. So this is Nalima Basket, who will be our moderator of the panel discussion. We have Dionawaz Sheikh from Nepal, who is our IT savvy guy. And then, I don't know if we can see below here, Doris Tulifau, who is the voice of the Brown Girl Walk video, which we'll be showing next. Savetcha Rana, our other co-vice chair from Nepal. And Remy Rajeswari Singh from Nepal, who is our admin support. So this is our team behind today's event. And next, I would like to share with you the Brown Girl Walk video. This video was produced by the University of the South Pacific Alufao campus students for a climate change project. It is produced in association with the Brown Girl Walk USP. It's a very interesting project. You can Google that online. And this video is the voice from the Pacific. So please run the video. Thank you.
A person's responsibility, a nation's obligation, the world's duty, climate change, a term so carelessly thrown around, yet its value so vital to the survival of our race. Our beautiful Pacifica, so deep in the clutches of this nightmare. They see our suffering, they hear our anguish, they know our fears, yet they brush it off so cavalier. They breed for wealth trumps any hope for our islands to remain. The desire to attain more pushes our homes to the brink of no return. How is it that we contribute the least to the world's carbon footprint, yet we carry the heaviest consequences? The saying goes, the strong prey on the weak, and they see us as such. They think the sizes of our land determine the strength of our wills. Their injustice stirs the passion beneath the surface of every islander. The drive to see their homes last another generation. The pull to see the region at its primal beauty. The hope that these small islands will make a change. This hope pushes me to stand strong. It ignites a fire within me to see justice served. This is my message to anyone willing to listen. To my brothers and sisters of blood and of bond, answer my call. Take up arms and stand beside me. Bear with me. Fight with me. We are Pacifica.
We already know that climate change has been a phenomenon that has been a terror on our land.
Our planet needs you. We have to unite to combat climate change.
Our planet needs you. We have to unite to combat climate change.
Our planet needs you. We have to unite to combat climate change.
So thank you very much, to those who participated in the creation of this video. I think the message, the important message behind all of this is that climate change can happen in many places and in many ways. And the key is that we have to unite to fight the climate change together. And this is the call for action. And today we have panelists coming together to unite and share their experience and knowledge on climate crisis, environment, and disaster risk reduction. So I would like to introduce our moderator today, Nalima Basket. Nalima is professionally an architect and a director of design CASA. She practices and promotes green and sustainable architect. She was elected as the executive board of the International Federation of Business and Professional Women and serves as young representative internationally for the year 2017 to 2021. She is also on the board member of the Political Literacy for Women in Nepal and Group for Rural Infrastructure Development, and also on the advisory board of Wellness Team Nepal. She is one of our working committee, so I welcome Nalima to be our moderator and take the stage on from now. Thank you, Nalima.
Thank you, Giv, for the introduction. Welcome everyone to the panel session, which I'll be moderating for next 1 hour. So please introduce yourself by the country name and the burning climate issue in your country in the chat box, and also the question answer that you would like to answer to our panelists. So with this, let's welcome our 4 amazing panelists who are the change makers and working really hard to bring awareness about the urgency of climate action. So the first panelist that we have today is Ms. Shilshila Acharya. She is from Nepal and is a sustainability practitioner and advocate and green entrepreneur and a mother. She is the director of Avni Center for Sustainability, a nonprofit, and Avni Ventures, a recycling company with the largest recycling network in Nepal. At the age of 19, Shilshila declined a fully funded MBBS scholarship from the government, Nepal government, to pursue environmental science and to do her part to solve the growing environmental problem around the world. She completed her master's from Nepal and Norway. She played a leading role in changing policy to ban plastic bags in Nepal. 16 years later, her passion for sustainability has only deepened. With this, I would like to welcome Shilshila Acharya and give the floor to you. The floor is all yours now, Shilshila.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. And since the speakers before me have already highlighted how women and girls are disproportionately impacted by any kind of crisis, be it climate change or COVID or in any crisis, women are more impacted, right? And we also, that's why we need to foster and promote and bring out women leadership to solve these issues. Because of technical issues, I have the video separately. So if you could pin my video, yeah, I'll be sharing the screen from here. Yeah, so without going too much into the context, like why women are more impacted, I'm going to share in very brief what we are doing in Nepal to bring women in leadership on these issues. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, thank you. Nilimadi, can you please pin the other one where my video is shown? Okay. So yeah, the topic of my presentation, very short. I've tried to keep very short so that we can have more time for discussion. So it's developing women leadership in solving climate issues and achieving sustainability. And as has already been introduced, I'm the founder and director of Avni Center for Sustainability and also of Avni Ventures Private Limited, a recycling company in Nepal. And I also founded Hamri Bahini, the Green Angels, which is social enterprise to empower women. So we've been working with the vision of a sustainable world, and the mission, what we do on a day-to-day basis is to find sustainable solutions through youth and women leadership. So especially engaging young women in leadership in climate issues. And in my presentation today, I'll be talking about 4 different areas or 4 different ways in which we are doing this. Like, first is the sustainability education. Second is women leadership in sustainability action. Third is policy and advocacy. And fourth is through women entrepreneurship. And to start with, like, first of all, we need to even among young people, like we still need to raise a lot of awareness regarding the urgency of the issues like climate change, right? A lot of youths still don't fully understand the gravity of the situation and the urgency. And especially after COVID-19, the other marginalized groups has become very evident. So this was done during the lockdown. So in the midst of the COVID crisis, we launched different online courses on climate and sustainability, and we launched it online, and this was mainly targeted for Nepali youth. So we developed courses like Understanding Sustainability. It was a 3-day course, and it was designed for youth from all backgrounds, like youth from management background or health background or environment background or social background could also join these courses. This was online. And then we also developed more specialized courses for those who are interested, like towards green economy. How do we recover in a green way from the COVID crisis? And we also develop courses like sustainability and entrepreneurship. How can entrepreneurs be a part of the solution? How can entrepreneurs, play a role in these in solving these kind of crises? So these classes were launched online, and then we were able to, through these classes, engage youths all over Nepal. You can see by location, we covered every rural and urban places of Nepal, and also by education, we covered youths from engineering background, medical, social, public health, and management, humanities, all different sorts of backgrounds. And the number is slightly updated. So far we have more than 1,300 who have taken these courses. And the very interesting thing here is that the average age of our participants was 22. And another interesting pattern that we've been seeing in our work again and again is that out of every 3 participants, 2 were females. 1 is male and 2 is female. So that's the ratio we have. So we see a natural inclination of women towards these issues. Even we call out for these classes in a very open application format, but then we always have been attracting more females. And this courses, which was started with the goal of more making youths more aware about sustainability issues and giving them a full understanding of these issues, has now evolved into a movement which is called Politics for Sustainability. And through this movement, we aim to create 100,000 young climate leaders in the next 5 years. So by this, what do we mean is that by young climate leaders, we mean young people who have the values of who have the values of sustainability, who really want to solve climate issues. And we want to create those leaders, not just in politics, but also in business, also in government systems, and also in different sectors like media. And we say 5 years. This looks very ambitious, but we say 5 years because we all know overall we have less than 10 years to act on these issues, right? So even if our generation gets there in 10 years, it won't be of much use because we won't have any time left to act. So the goal here is very ambitious, but still we are running with this goal. And luckily in Nepal, we had our local elections after 20 years, 5 years back. And this time, right now, we are just ahead of the second local elections. And we have a term of 5 years. And so we just have 2 election cycles to make sure that we have, more young people participating in politics, and also we have the right kind of leaders in place. So we have roughly 2 months left for the next local elections. And right now also we are also including Nilima Didi. She is also, on that. And we are also trying to encourage more and more youths to, take part actively in this election through voting, but also as candidates, and also supporting them in different ways, like helping shape their vision, their manifesto, and also we through Avni Center, we're engaging 400 citizen reporters so that they can also report the local issues and also carry out political surveys, and we can communicate that what voters want to the leaders, and also to the voters as well as the political leaders. And regarding women leadership in sustainability action, as I said, like in all of our activities, we have seen women participation in is the majority, right? So we also created opportunities like different kind of fellowships. We created green local government fellowships where the youths had to pick up one burning issue in their region, and then they had to create a project and to solve that, and then they had to design a project and guide their local government to implement it, which would be funded by the local government. And in this we engaged total 60 fellows, and again average age was 22, and 78% of them were females. And similarly we created another fellowship, which was Indigenous Knowledge Fellowship, and there also we engaged 45 total. And again, the patterns are the same. We had 66% women, and again, average age was 22. So in the Indigenous Knowledge Fellowship, like they went to their communities, and instead of just focusing on the problems, they focused on the solutions, like all the indigenous solutions that we have on medicine, on sustainable architecture, forest management, and sustainable products. And they have documented all that, and we are in the process of publishing a book. And in these fellows and young people have been working on different ideas like organic farming, solid waste management, rainwater and water conservation, awareness and community engagement campaigns, promotion of sustainable products. And the good thing about the local government fellows was that they covered all 17 SDGs through their project designs, and 65 million was contributed by the local governments to implement these projects. And apart from education and sustainability action, we've also been engaged a lot in advocacy work. So, even during the COVID crisis, like I was heavily involved in making like live videos on sustainable lifestyle, and organizing different events and discussions around sustainability with experts, with youths. So, conducting a lot of discussion to make these issues the #1 issue in the Nepali society. And along with me, a lot of other inspiring young women have been pushing these issues forward, and we are seeing more women leadership in climate issues. And also, like for the first time, we had our Miss Nepal Earth. She showcased a project from Nepal, which was on the traditional method of providing drinking water to Nepalis, which is called the hiti. It's a gravity-based water system that is not found anywhere else in the world. So we are working with her to preserve those hitis and to showcase that knowledge to the world. And apart from engaging the youths, and we have also been engaged in educating young and senior politicians and policymakers from all major political parties on different issues like climate change lawmaking in the context of COVID-19, politics and sustainable development post-COVID, and disaster and sustainability, leaving no one behind, SDGs and Dalit women. So we have been doing different courses, either physical or online, to different lawmakers at the national level, provincial level, and the local level. And here also we have seen a pattern that, like female policymakers are very open and keen on these issues, more than men, that I have, and that has been my experience. And so this is how we're also engaging the policymakers in these issues. And on the other, and on the fourth side, on entrepreneurship, we've been, through Hamri Bahini, I have been engaged for the past 8 years in creating green jobs for women and replacing plastic bags with cloth bags. So Hamri Bahini was the first one to introduce cotton bags in supermarkets of Nepal. And right now we don't have, the supermarkets of Nepal do not offer plastic bags, and they offer only reusable cloth bags. So that is one of the success stories. As Nilima Didi also mentioned, like we were able to bring policy to ban single-use plastics all over Nepal, which has been implemented from this fiscal year. And yeah, and also through the recycling business, I've been involved in upcycling clothes and waste, creating green jobs for women. As you can see, we've been involved in secondhand cloth drives, collecting secondhand clothes, and again, segregating them and selling them in a nominal price in different communities, making different products out of it. And you can see this mat on the right bottom hand, like it was created from the ropes collected from mountain waste. So we've also been engaged in mountain cleanup campaign, and the ropes, the climbing ropes that were collected were made into these beautiful mats by utilizing the skills of the indigenous women. Yeah, and through Hamri Bahini, we've been training women on green practices and creating a lot of green jobs on housekeeping services, and and integrating women into the formal economy, formal jobs. Also creating a lot of green jobs for women on recycling work through Avni Ventures, and also creating a lot of women waste entrepreneurs. It's a very male-dominated sector, and we have very few female entrepreneurs in this sector. So including me and a few others, there are a lot of women entrepreneurs also coming up now. And this has been talked about. So we also looked into the impact of COVID crisis disproportionately on women. And based on that, we also carried out a lot of activities to actively help the women entrepreneurs to support their products and to promote their products. And we are also supporting a group in Buranil Kanta. It's a women organic consumer cooperative. And through these kind of, apart from individual entrepreneurship, we're also supporting different groups like these to run as cooperatives and to promote like organic products and local products, and to help the customers as well as the women to promote these kind of products. So in the end, as a summary, I would like to say that we have talked enough about how women are the victims of climate and sustainability issues, but then they are also the leaders with the right knowledge, the right skills, and who have a sense of responsibility. And they're naturally inclined towards the idea of sustainability. So without establishing women leadership in every sphere and every sector, we cannot hope to achieve sustainability and solve climate crisis. And we cannot expect women leadership to happen by accident. It has to be supported at each level and every step of the way, and through education, capacity building, through socioeconomic empowerment, and through representation, political representation, and leadership in all sectors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shilshila. It's like wonderful to hear what you are doing in the ground, and also bringing awareness with our policymakers, because I think the policy, by making policy, is the only way forward. That rallying in the street, I think we need to be in the board to make the changes. So thank you so much for all the thing that you are doing so far. And the next speaker that we have for today is Okalani Mariner from Samoa. She's from the National University of Samoa. Lanuluva Student Association. It is a youth-led organization that aims to raise awareness about the effects and the impact of climate change, as well as provide a platform that empowers youth to raise their voices and tell their stories. As a Pacific climate warrior, she has used storytelling and poetry to fight for climate justice and mobilize youth. She's also working full-time as an artist and a creative entrepreneur that aims to encourage specific and neurodiverse women and youth to pursue business ventures in the creative arts. With this, I would like to welcome our next panelist, Okalani. Now the floor is all yours.
Hello, Falava. I hope you can hear me clearly. Hello again, my name is Okalani Mariner, but before I speak, I was wondering if I could share a recording. So I might just share screen if that's okay. Can you see this? I hope you can. So the video I'm about to play is basically a summary of Lanalo Ava's entire work for the last year. And we've been doing a lot of advocacy around encouraging young girls to actually pursue science as a career path, but not only that, educate themselves in climate change. In 2020, we discovered that the Ministry of Education statistics released stated that girls were actually dropping out of high school. And on top of that, they were also not enrolling in science. And so there was this huge gap between a lot of girls going into high school, but also going into university. And so on top of having lack of education, there was also a lack of STEM resources. And because of that, we really wanted to partner with them because Lanalo Ava's whole goal and whole reason we were formed was to really push education and also create a platform for women and girls and youth in Samoa to really share their stories about their climate experience, but also to provide a space where they can explore what climate reality looks like for them in this context. So we will play this video. I hope you can hear.
I think we cannot hear the video because your computer is connected to your headphone. We cannot hear the audio.
You may have to unmute as you play the video as well. Right. You could try that.
Sorry about that. Let me try this again.
The future of the Green of the Pacific, or Lo'ulumana'i Lanalo Ava in Samoan, is basically just the essence of Lanalo Ava, which is education and climate action. The students here today are from 12 different schools all over Samoa, 6 from Upolu and 6 from Sava'i, and each school has 5 participants. And so that's a total of 60 students who are here today. And the purpose of it is giving them like a climate change 101 crash course. Like, this is what climate change is in your personal life, and this is also the science behind it.
We have only one world.
We just might have a chance at adapting and mitigating climate change.
The future of the Green of the Pacific, or Lo'ulumana'i Lanalo Ava, is a partnership project between Lanalo Ava Student Association and Samoa Conservation Society, and is funded by the British High Commission.
Behind me right now, they're split into 6 different groups. And so it's groups of 10, and the whole point of splitting them up into groups instead of doing a presentation was because we wanted it to be interactive.
This project aims to educate Samoan youth on the science effects of climate change, as well as encourage them to pursue STEM careers in their future. Also aims to accomplish global climate action targets to prepare Samoa for COP26 next year in the United Kingdom.
So I'll stop it there. But that was just a brief summary of what London Law Ava is trying to do with the youth of the Pacific, specifically Samoa. And I just want to acknowledge that it's such an honor and privilege to be among such amazing women today. The lady before me, I'm so sorry, I didn't want to butcher your name, but you are so inspiring because what you've been doing on such a huger scale, we've been doing in a small scale. And it's so amazing to see how much work you've been doing with women in the community, but also women around the world. So thank you so much for just the work you do and existing and holding these spaces so that women and girls can learn and be educated in these climate spaces. That is basically what Lana Lau Ava is. It's to provide climate education in Samoa, but also provide advocacy. Because we do not contribute a lot to the fossil fuel industry, the Pacific alone entirely is a collection of islands that contribute less than 0.03% to greenhouse gas emissions. So when you look at it like that, it's very hard for us to be zero waste, low energy, renewable energy pursuit, but we still do. Samoa's aim is to be 100% renewable by 2025. It's very ambitious. I'm not sure we'll ever end up there, but it is a start. And a lot of our work focuses on really pushing for climate advocacy, for Indigenous sovereignty and also youth leadership in these climate spaces. And so for us as a 350 Pacific member, but also as the co-founder for Lana Lau Ava, a lot of our work focuses on telling youth that their experiences are valid, but also this is how climate change is impacting them. And this is how we can advocate for this to change. I think that's basically a summary of what we're doing on the environmental scale, but I did want to touch up on something that isn't often talked about, which is climate anxiety and climate depression due to this change. And so one of the things I've experienced in being in these spaces is I have to be hopeful. There is no opportunity for me to be sad or disheartened or feel like the world is ending because I can't choose to feel that way because of my island and because of the people that I'm fighting for. And so a lot of what we want to do is really provide hope that there is a chance for climate reality, but for women and girls in the future. And I think I will end there before I start bantering a bit, but that is a little bit about what we're doing here in Samoa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. One thing I've realized is what you are doing to the young girls before they get into the business and professional field is the way forward. Because if we can empower them at early age, they tend to come with the green and sustainable business plans in future, because they will be the one who will be making lots of money and contributing to climate change. So I would suggest that you get in touch with Shilshila and figure it out how you can expand what you are doing, not just with young ones, but the one who are already graduated and looking for a job. So I would recommend, if I were in your place, I would figure it out, find a way to collaborate or maybe, do a training in that sense. So thank you so much, for everything that you are doing at an early age. So with this, I would like to welcome our next speaker. And she is Jenny Yi-Chen Han from Singapore, who joined SEI in August 2019 as a research associate for the Gender, Environment, and Development Research team. Jenny's background is in sociology and holds a broad interest in the interrelationship between environment, justice, gender, and decolonization. Her research at SEI covers gender and society equity issues across various environmental topics, including climate change, disaster, energy transition, and environmental activism. She holds a master's degree distinction in sociology and global change from the University of Edinburgh. With this, I would like to welcome our panelist, Jenny. Now the floor is all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So I will share my screen and begin my presentation. I hope you can all see it. Great. So just a small correction of the introduction. I'm actually based in Bangkok and I'm originally from Taiwan. So as mentioned, my name is Jenny and I'm a gender researcher at SCI Asia. And my work at SCI Asia lies within the nexus of gender, environment, and development. So thank you so much first to the panelists who presented. It was really great to hear a lot about the advocacy that's happening on the ground. And my presentation today will be a little bit more research oriented, and I'll be talking about the climate change and its gendered impacts on livelihoods, particularly within the Asia region. So first, before going into the content of the presentation, I just want to give a quick word about the unequal impacts of climate change. I'm sure we're all quite aware of at this point. So I think we can all agree that the impacts of climate change are very gendered. So multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination and inequality that's based on gender, class, race, sexuality, age, location, etc., undermine many people's capacity to cope with and adapt to climate change and disasters. So indeed, although both women and men may depend on nature-based resources and activities for their livelihoods, existing patriarchal structures across many contexts shape social, economic, and political systems that undermine women's access to resources, productive assets, technology, and other information that's needed to adapt to climate change impacts. So this creates differentiated capacity to adapt. People's vulnerability to climate change and capacity to adapt depends on factors such as human assets, social assets, and economic assets that, as explained before, is determined largely by a lot of existing power and patriarchal structures in place. So this results in women's rights and needs being overlooked by policymaking in many instances, including those that shape climate mitigation and adaptation strategies. So in 2022, my team and I at SCI wrote a report that's commissioned by UN Women titled Climate Change, Gender Equality, and Human Rights in Asia. And we utilized an intersectional, gender transformative, human rights-based framework of analysis to explore the gender impacts of climate change in 10 different sectors. So for more information on this framework and to read the whole report, I'll post a link in the chat after I finish this presentation. So by synthesizing evidence from literature across 10 different sectors and exploring case studies from Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam, we summarized the key findings and offered some policy recommendations for gender transformative and human rights-based climate action. So I'll extract some of the content from this report for the rest of the presentation, specifically about gender and climate change impacts from a livelihoods approach by zooming in on specific sectors. So these are the sectors that we covered in the report. There are quite a lot. And we organized them by primary, secondary, and tertiary. So in the next couple of slides, I will just zoom in on 3 sectors from each of the categories to highlight some of the key drivers of vulnerabilities related to climate change within these sectors. So first we have agriculture and forestry, which I think climate change impact is quite obvious in this sector. So the sector itself is highly vulnerable to impacts of climate change and is a priority for adaptation. And it's also a crucial source of livelihoods. So as climate change leads to reduced agricultural outputs, it amplifies what might already be significant hardships in many rural communities. And at the same time, agriculture is also a major contributor to climate change itself. And in related, forestry itself is a subsector of agriculture, and it is an important source of livelihoods and a critical component of climate change mitigation as well. So first, one dimension of the driver of vulnerabilities within the sector is gendered roles and access to resources. So farmers' ability to adapt to climate change strongly depends on adopting new practices and technologies, such as irrigation, which requires control and access over resources such as land and services. However, this access and control is highly gendered. For example, land tenure structures in many parts of Asia remain patrilineal, which restricts women's access and ownership of land. And this lack of reliable access to land makes it more challenging for women farmers and also other marginalized groups to adapt their agriculture practices to climate change and to undermines their capacity for disaster risk reduction. Furthermore, social cultural norms and livelihood practices and the gender division of labor constrains their access to resources in the context of climate change. So for example, because of certain pre-existing traditional roles, women are frequently responsible for the collection and sale of non-timber forest products, but climate change and actually conservation policies as well that restricts entry and access to certain land may reduce or eliminate the availability of certain forest products, which both decreases people's food security and also increases the amount of labor that women have to put into to find these resources, which also constrains their opportunities for seeking out alternative livelihoods. And next, within the sector, land-based conflicts and land grabs is also a key driver of vulnerability. So in recent years, there has been an increase in land acquisitions driven by both adaptation and mitigation policies. So this is an example of how responses to climate change can actually exacerbate inequalities if it doesn't put social equality principles at the core. So these instances are collectively labeled as green grabs and defined as, quote unquote, the appropriation of natural resources for environmental ends, which includes market initiatives such as biofuel production, plantation forestry, and carbon offsetting projects. And these activities can dispossess communities of land and resources and destabilize existing livelihoods. So considering all the gendered inequalities that already exist in the distribution and access of land and resources, poor and indigenous women are often disproportionately affected by land grabs and land use change that further constrains their livelihoods. And in many instances, women are also exposed to increased gender-based violence within the context of land conflict and competition over resources. Next is the gender dimension of food insecurity. So considering climate impacts such as droughts, floods, etc., as increased competition for land by both state and non-state actors, farmers are increasingly vulnerable to land use change and threatens their food security. And while this has an impact at the community level, we found that when facing food scarcity, women are more likely than men to skip meals or reduce consumption when food or water is scarce due to gendered expectations. And in certain contexts, research has demonstrated that girls are more likely to be malnourished than boys because of gender preferences in many households. And lastly, in terms of unequal access to information and decision-making, effective adaptation requires developing new skills and having access to climate information. However, the deployment of training and information programs often perpetuate a male bias in agriculture. So actually one of the research that my team did about 2 years ago in Ninh Thuan province in Vietnam introduced this drought forecasting tools or explored how the introduction of a drought forecasting tools by the state highlight how adaptation strategies or technologies may not necessarily lead to more gender equalizing outcomes. Because in this instance, in this province in Vietnam, when the drought forecasting tools were introduced, the uptake were actually co-opted by more powerful groups, including ethnic majority groups versus ethnic minority groups who had barriers to accessing these information. So while on the outside, this intervention seems like everyone has access, everyone's invited to join meetings, but local context and nuances prevent certain peoples from accessing these tools. Next, I'd like to go into the secondary sector and highlight manufacturing. So here is where climate impacts and the gender impacts of climate change may be slightly less obvious than agriculture. So I think it's obvious to say that manufacturing is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, and its long supply chain and fixed asset requirements makes it very susceptible to direct damages caused by extreme weather events. By driving migration and deepening poverty, climate change can indirectly trigger changes in the composition of the manufacturing workforce, labor patterns, and working conditions, with persistent gender disparities likely to be exacerbated as a result. So our report will have focus specifically on the garment manufacturing sector, which is a sector that employs a very large percentage of women and has significant environmental impacts as well. So first, climate change and labor migration is highlighted as a key driver of vulnerability in the report. So across Asia, climate change effects on agricultural livelihoods, as explained before, or among other factors, have propelled an influx of rural inhabitants towards urban and peri-urban areas for waged work, with many entering the manufacturing workforce. So although traditionally migrant workers have largely been men, we've observed a feminization of migration in South and Southeast Asia in recent years, where there are large influxes of poor rural women into urban areas in search of waged work. For example, the ready-made and garment industry in Bangladesh employs about 4 million workers. Many are rural urban migrants, and within that number, about 85% of the workforce are women. And as extreme weather events increase with climate change, that causes more economic hardships in many rural areas. The numbers of workers that are going into exploitative work arrangements in factory settings may substantially increase. And what our research also found is that many of the women garment workers in Dhaka, Bangladesh, are rural migrants, and they live in slums or informal settlements that are highly vulnerable to environmental risks and disasters. And the risks faced by women and workers are compounded by the lack of labor rights and workplace safety compliance in many factories. And furthermore, climate change-induced temperature rise can directly translate to increased heat stress on women within their work settings, such as in factories, which are not often protected by sufficient labor standards. Also, the next theme is this concept of local production systems are embedded within global production networks. So one of the solutions that's been offered to combat supply chains from climate change is to climate-proof supply chain from climate impacts. However, this concept does suggest that supply chains with more diversified sources reduces dependency on single location for supplies. However, such supply sources diversification means that supplier switches and are more prone to switch and weaken the legal contracts of their supply, which can undermine labor conditions and job security for mostly poor paid, low skilled workers at production sites. I'm sorry, I think construction just started next door, so I hope it won't interfere too much with the presentation. And lastly, in the tertiary sector, we looked at wholesale and retail trade. So many communities rely on different markets for their daily needs. As a consequence, these communities are greatly affected by climate risk and related damages in earlier stages in the supply chain or market infrastructure itself. So in many rural areas across Asia, many livelihoods rely on selling agricultural products, which are highly vulnerable to climate change. And such uncertainties contribute to migration to urban areas where street vendors are often amongst the poorest, living and working in fragile houses and shops that are essentially very vulnerable to hazardous climate events. Also, working in markets is often a family or individual business, often without contracts and legal recognition. So also this is a very precarious working condition for people. So one driver of vulnerability that we highlighted is that climate change impact on supply chain and infrastructure within the sector. So retail trade is often an essential part of the livelihoods of farmers and fishers in rural and coastal Asia, but the effects of climate change on the quantity and quality of products sold makes this particularly precarious. Also, transportation and infrastructure are also susceptible to climate-related disasters impact, which are increasing, and in turn affects the livelihood strategies of both producers and the intermediaries that might employ to deliver their products to the markets. And lastly, there are some direct impacts of street vendors due to climate change. So it is also a gender demographic. Women from the majority of informal street vendors in countries such as Vietnam and Cambodia and in Dhaka, the evidence also shows that while men are the majority of the street vendors, women in the households prepare their items to sell. So these kind of precarities and vulnerabilities that's inflicted by climate change does have a gendered impacts, and in spaces where women's work is not recognized, that makes them in a specifically vulnerable positions and often overlooked by policies. And also intensified exposure to heat stress is a direct challenge to many of those who work in street settings. So to wrap up, moving forward, I highlighted a few key takeaways. First is that climate action requires a holistic approach that embeds an intersectional and gender transformative approach that tackles inequalities at its roots, and that climate change affects all sectors of the economy, but the manner and extent are strongly determined by local context. So in order to be effective, mitigation and adaptation must therefore take into account the needs and rights of those who derive their livelihoods from specific sectors with the consideration of the local context that they're in. And next, there is this need for sectoral policies to integrate climate change, human rights, and gender equality objectives, which can entail diagnosing existing laws, policies, and regulatory systems in relation to their effects on climate-induced vulnerabilities, including the sectors that we just covered. And in the report, there is a very comprehensive list of specific recommendations that we have in terms of policymaking. And a lot of these policies ultimately need to center around aspects of community ownership, access, democratic, and gender equal decision makings to enhance capacities. And lastly, I would challenge us to also move beyond technological solutions. I think when it comes to climate responses, it's very easy to develop a technology or develop a tool and simply apply that tool to a certain context to help people adapt to climate change, such as a lot of, this is very obvious in the agriculture sector, where there are so many different technologies that have been developed in recent years to supposedly solve gendered or other social equality issues. But actually the way that these technologies land in these contexts are not neutral, and the different uptakes and the different usage by these people can actually risk exacerbating existing inequalities if specific instances or nuances of the local context are not taken into account. So that wraps up my presentation. Thank you so much for the attention, and I hope I was within the time frame. And I'll share the link to the report soon after. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I think one of the major thing that contributes to climate, carbon footprints is like fast fashion and, construction, which I belong to, and also the food trade that goes around the world. I think what you have said is something that is happening all over the world, but we are not, taking it seriously, because that is not something that, we tend to, implement in our daily life. The thing that's happening in Dhaka, we are talking about women being underpaid, but they are the ones who are contributing to the fast fashion as well. So finding alternate solution, alternate job solution, green, job business, I think is the way forward. And everything that you have said today is something that I can relate to. And I think everyone here can relate to, because that has come up in our mind, but we have not figured out how to move forward from it. So thank you, Jenny. And I wish that we'll have to see you somewhere with all the, expanded version of your research. And with this, I would like to invite our next panelist, who is Dr. Barbara Bedeschi-Lewando from New Zealand. She is a climate change and disaster risk reduction advisor in New Zealand and Asia Pacific. She has served on the board of several organizations, including the New Zealand Federation of Business and Professional Women and United Nations Women. As a woman of International Women Caucus and the Climate Change Action Hub of National Council of Women, she contributes her knowledge and experiences As the director of Kiwi Consult, she works at the national, regional, and global level from the United Nations, government, civil society, and the private sector to achieve sustainable development, resilience, and gender equality. Barbara holds a degree in political science and international relations and a master's degree in environmental development policies. She will present the most recent research finding on the relationship between women's economic empowerment and the climate change, as well as the potentially transformative role that women play in environment protection, action, and activism. She urges the need to support the implementation of a gender action plan and raise ambition of women economic empowerment and climate and environmental outcomes. With this, I would like to welcome Barbara, and also would like to request all the attendees, if you want to ask any question, please put it down on the chat box so that I can put it on later after this, the final panelists. With this, I would like to welcome Barbara. Now the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Nalima. Kia ora and warm Pacific greetings from New Zealand to all of you. What of an interesting webinar this has been, and how many fantastic projects and research work we have heard. I would like to start with a question that co-chair Helen Swales asked at the beginning of this webinar, which was, how can we hope for a solution to the problems? And the problems in question today are climate change, climate crisis, environmental and disaster risk reduction, and hence resilience building. So I guess that the question is, how can we put more pressure on our governments and really put the forward gear to change, the change that we wish and we want? Now, COVID has revealed that how really challenging it is to manage global, systemic, and really compounding crisis. And like COVID, the climate crisis, the environmental challenges, and natural disasters have the potential to disrupt society at multiple scales, at multiple levels, and to impact hardest the most vulnerable, like we heard, and mostly women and girls. However, the coronavirus crisis holds profound lessons that can help us address the climate crisis and disaster risk reduction. This, if we make greater people and environment resiliency core to our planning for the recovery that we have ahead. So my intervention aims to distill some examples that to affect change. By change, I mean government change. That's the change that we're talking about, to inform climate policy and resilience building as embedded components of any policy going forward. In my work, and I do have a consultancy company and I have a research company that utilizes artificial intelligence to compound and crack information, we aim to really capture systemic type of complexity to inform better practices and to increase resilience to crisis for government, businesses, civil society, and the people. The work that we do include the use of open data, adopting what are called, and what Jenny referred to as well, adaptive risk management strategies and different toolboxes that embrace heterogeneous type of decision-making, different type of decision-making in a context of uncertainty, and takes much of a broader type of approach to resilience that tries to elevate human well-being, including societal and ecological resilience, that uses somehow the tools of collaboration and collective intelligence of government, business, academia, and civil society as the people. So my intervention, hopefully, is not really about building back better. We hear this word quite a lot, but hopefully is building back differently, with a view that the best recovery that we could hope for should be led by women for women, hopefully. And as a climate change and disaster risk reduction advisor, my job is really to put pressure on governments to enable change. And for this, the starting point is to have a policy or a set of policies that are in place, that fall into a country, that are simple, straightforward, adaptable, with a set of different tools, whether they're risk management tools, of civil society tools, of gender type of tools, which enable those policies to permeate within a country for the betterment of the people. So based on some of the lessons that we learned through some of the projects that we worked on, I drew 3 types of recommendations, from a COVID type of recovery to pressure on governments for change, for minimum change for the people, by the people. The first is the use of open data to build resilience, so that COVID has shown that the value of impact monitoring and open data sharing for building resilience. And there has been really calls around the world to develop an integrated monitoring system to guard more effectively against future pandemics. If we think of this, a similarly global system for monitoring climate impacts and openly sharing data across boundaries would really enable better climate risk management and resilience across different levels of society, of sectors, etc. Developing strategies for ethical stewardship of human collective behavior would further help to build a climate impact resilience for all of us. So that in terms of action that we have used, is practically speaking, we use data sets and dashboards. So we just take different data sets and we translate them visually into dashboard, which are both qualitative and quantitative, to influence and develop policy, to assist governments on how best those data talk. Hence, we can then influence the policy that we would like to see. We have developed a data service that helps government, business, civil society to get insights, take decisions, and report on the progress. Specifically, we're working with a set of dashboards and data that brings all relevant data sets in one place, which is useful, for example, for one of our ministries here in New Zealand. And this, we are capturing 25 different dashboards that tell the story from a quantitative and qualitative way for New Zealand. And this dashboard also align with the Sustainable Development Goals, number 5 specifically, and comprise qualitative analysis as well, so that it provides three types of stories, of qualitative type of stories, which one is good, one is average, and one is bad, for at a national level, and also at a Pacific type of regional level as well. The second example that we have is that we have been working on what it's called adaptive risk management strategies and tools. And so that we really need to try to influence government to adopt adaptive risk management strategies that embrace uncertainty and implement a range of strategies for building resilience at multiple interconnected system levels through very clear and endorsed risk ownership, so that everybody is accountable at different levels to build that resilience in a country. There are a number of suite of tools, like Jenny said as well, that can be support this kind of endeavors, but that can take as well a broader approach of resilience that elevates people well-being, with the people front and center, including societal and ecological resilience. Example of this is that we've been doing work on understanding and mapping the direct cross-border and cross-sectoral impacts of potential climate to guide effective risk mitigation strategies. This can be done with adaptive risk management strategies by designing appropriate risk contingency program and projects that involved public and private institutions. An example of work that we did like this was a visualization tool. So it was dynamically giving the capability to visualize and see pathways and storyline to government and different stakeholders to visualize what lies ahead and to anticipate unknown events and prioritize options and measures to be taken. We've been helping governments across Asia Pacific to really digest the lesson that came from COVID and other systemic crises, climate crisis, etc., into representation, for them to be able to visualize those kind of problems and then start building cause and effects and build a network and sort of like have a virtual world where they were seeing the problem and they were able to explore potential solution of historic shocks under which really possible future can be imagined. And this future most likely actually have been asked, government has been asking us to put women and girls, an intersectional type of consideration front and center. One last example that I would like to do of the work that we've been doing is that we work through collaboration. We believe in collaboration. We believe in breaking down the silos of government, of business, of civil society. We all work in silos. And this through the use of collective intelligence, this fantastic intelligence that there is across this webinar and all of us. And so that building resilience at multiple interconnected levels by really having a long-term focus that really targets and looks at the people well-being, at our well-being, and includes societal and environmental resilience. For example, we've been understanding the multidisciplinary SDGs as one of the impact indicators, which are applicable at different scales, including citizens, private businesses, or organization. And we've been working at develop strategies for critical stewardship or collective behavior to build climate impact resilience. All of these examples clearly affect change, affect government change, and the aim of this example of the work that we have done, it's really to inform climate policy, to assist government, businesses, and civil society to work together for a better world and building resilience. So I would like to end my, my intervention here with the words that Carol has used at the beginning, that together as women, we stand very strong. Our collective knowledge, our work, our projects, our influence in policy can and is a force for change, for the change that we actually we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I think there is so much more to, learn from you for everything that you'll be doing from local to national level. And I think your knowledge can be, helpful to many other over here, from different parts of Asia Pacific. I think we have from other region as well. Talking about, open data and climate impact resilience initiative. And these are some of the things that are being talked about a lot of times. But when it comes to, getting it done, I think many countries, they lag behind. I think that's where we need your assistance. I hope in the future we'll have you in other webinars where you can, guide the decision making, or the planners, or the people who are actually working on it to actually figure it out how to get it done. So thank you, Barbara. And with this, I would like to request all the participants here to use your raise hand function if you have any questions for our panelists. But before that, I would like to put one question to all of you, all the 4 panelists. If you are given an opportunity to be in a national decision-making position, what do you think will be your 3 major recommendations in policy making that would you'd give towards to prevent climate change? So I would put it again. If given opportunity to be in a national decision-making position, what are the 3 major recommendations in policy making you would give to prevent climate change? So I think I would like to start with Shilshila, the first speaker. The floor is yours, Shilshila.
Thank you so much for the question. As I said, like, if we had to solve climate change, then the first thing that needs to be done is to have more women in decision-making roles. And we have also seen during the COVID crisis, like by not being in the decision-making tables, like women are being put into disproportionately high impacts. So first thing would be, especially for Nepal, what I would do is like ensure at least 50% women representation. And that does not mean, women as one block, but also, again, recognizing that there are different layers within women as well, right? Indigenous women, Dalit women, there are different layers. So how do we represent all of those women in decision-making, in political representation, and ensuring that right now we have 33% representation, written in the constitution, but still political parties, a lot of those, they don't follow that. So strictly implementing that, but taking it from 33 to 50. That would be first, and then, so that everything starts with that. And then second would be, again, allowing for the meaningful participation of youths in all platforms, creating opportunities across politics, across entrepreneurship, across government jobs, and creating a lot of opportunities for them. Because in Nepal, like we are having a massive youth brain drain, and a lot of the capable and hopeful people are leaving the country. So who's left to do all those work here, right? So that's the second thing. First women, second youth, and then third would be massively mobilizing media, because right now we're not giving as much attention to these issues that it deserves on a year-round basis in all sectors. Yeah, those 3.
Thank you, Shilshila. I'd like to know if any other panelists would like to answer this one.
Hi, this is Jenny. Sorry, I just started speaking. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I hope I didn't cut anyone off. I think my internet is a little bit off. But to respond to that question, I think from my perspective, I think there's definitely a need to prioritize actions that redress social and gender inequalities through more transformative programs. So I think under that broad category, it's very important to have policies that enable community ownership of climate adaptation and mitigation programs. And this will entail involving communities in their decision-making and paying particular attention to women and other groups that are typically marginalized from these processes, and designing actions that challenge the root causes of exclusions. So I think this relates a little bit to what I touched on earlier, for example, on technological interventions or on interventions such as land grabbing that can turn into green grabbing. These are all instances when green grabbing happens, it's when land is enclosed for the sake of climate mitigation or adaptation, but it doesn't involve the consent of local communities. It doesn't take into consideration the needs of local communities. So I think enabling community ownership of climate adaptation and mitigation should be a very key priority in climate policies. And second, I think that there needs to be a better inclusion of multi-stakeholders cooperation to implement policies that are holistic and also inclusive. So policies right now are largely made by experts, right? Like it's usually a very insulated kind of community that determines the agenda of climate change, that determines the narratives of climate change, and determines the experiences of climate change. We see this in like, for example, the writing of IPCC reports, like all of these major documents that sort of determines what we think about climate change. These are usually by a group of experts that are often from institutions in the global north. So I think there is also a need to kind of break that dimensions as well, and to include grassroots organizations and empowered communities that obviously are experiencing the worst brand of climate change impacts, but maybe their knowledge are not legitimized in global policy making spheres. So I think trying to turn that power dynamic around is also very key in moving forward in climate change policies. Thanks, and sorry for that very long answer.
Thank you, Jenny. With this, Barbara, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah.
Or
yes, of course. So I guess that I think that you need policy. You need policy, possibly the golden key here. And so that in a way, to build policy, you need to build the capability, like Jenny said as well, you need to bring different sectors together, not the usual suspects, you know, that they've been said it and they've been done it. And you need to actually allow, for our discussion, women and girls of different intersectionality to not necessarily be in the table, but maybe build a new table, so that CSW NGO, this forum, is a fantastic opportunity to catalyze different type of stakeholders, so-called stakeholders, business, government, civil society, to initiate that kind of dialogue. That will be one of the things that could be done in order to catalyze collective intelligence. Our future, it's only if we use all of our collective intelligence. In the meantime, you could build the capacity of different groups of women across the Asia Pacific to establish council, climate change, resilience building, call them whatever you want, really to lead the climate justice and recovery, which are led by women, for women, with women that really wish to work together with everybody else. Also, you would want to experiment. We have an incredible opportunity to experiment. Post-COVID, it's an incredible opportunity. And so that there is an opportunity here to explore, to innovate, and innovate with what is called policy innovation, which is the frontier of policy. Try new things. You might make mistakes, but so what? It's not much of a problem. And actually, women are so well equipped to try, If we fail, okay, big deal, we'll try something else. So that really enable an environment of experimentation, of trying things at different ways. It's clear that the ways that we've done things till now, it doesn't work. And we really need to come together collectively, get out of our individual type of shells, and really stop just talking, but really trying. And if we make a mistake, big deal, we'll keep on going. And then another type of recommendation will be to set around a system like this, a system of measurement, of monitoring, evaluation, research, learning. And so, which is really fueled by data, by actual relevant data that tell the story, so that everything that it's said, it's availed, it's relevant, it's backed up, governments cannot back down, and most importantly, has an iteration so that it goes from the beginning of the monitoring all the way to learning and then doing further research in order to embrace and adapt to different situations. So that will be my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So the last panelist that we have is Okalani. If you'd like to share something related to this topic, the 3 policies that you would recommend if you are in the government. Would you like to answer that? Okay. I think she's not answering. So I would like to go to the next question that has been asked by Soeben Delhi from BPW New Zealand. What she has said is, thank you to the 4 wonderful and inspiring panelists. I appreciated the comment about positivity and hope. So many things, family, work, global crisis, wait on us. What is one thing that gives you hope? Okay, anyone can answer, I think. Okay, Shilshila, you can go forward. Okay.
Yeah, this is a short answer on this. Yeah, this is one thing that also keeps coming back to me again and again. And I've thought a lot about this, like if it's such a big scale of a crisis, and even with all this effort, if we won't be able to, solve this in the end, then what's the point, right? So it keeps bogging me all the time. And in the end, like what gives me hope is platforms like these. Whenever I meet other people who are working with equal, hope, and who are pushing all the boundaries and fighting so hard, and who care equally to solve this problem. Like whenever I see and meet people like that, that gives me hope that, I'm not alone. There are still so many people who still care and believe that we together will be able to solve this. So that, yeah, remembering all those people gives me hope every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilshila. Barbara, would you like to?
That's a very, very important question. And especially now in a time of COVID, that we're a little bit all very tired, and we don't see any, with conflicts and terrible stories that are coming from across the world that impacts us at different level. I guess that personally, what gives me hope is that as humans, we are good people. And when we are, for example, I can give a very simple example. When I am among my BPW sisters, I feel motivated to keep on going. And although life never goes sometimes the way that we wish to, I think that what gives us hope is the strength that we have collectively. It's our intellect, it's our collective capabilities, strengths, weaknesses. That's what should give us hope, a hope for a better future and for the type of legacy that maybe we would like to try to leave in this very short life of ours. So if there is a little bit of betterment that we could leave as a legacy, that really gives me hope. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. And Jenny and Okalani, would you like to say something?
Sure. So I think for me, it gives me hope to remind myself that that there is collective solidarity, and that there are a group of people, so many people in this world that have a vision of how to make this world a better place. And I think to remind myself that it's not just my individual efforts, but my individual efforts are just one piece in a very large fabric. And I read somewhere that you can call this maybe mosaic thinking. So we live kind of in a culture where we focus so much on the grand gestures, on like the big statements, etc. But when you have a mosaic perspective, you just understand yourself as just one piece of tile that fits into a larger piece of work, right? So if you zoom in on the single tile that is yourself, it can look quite meaningless, or it could look quite bland, or it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. But if you step back and just see where you fit in the larger piece, you understand that there's no tile that's too small. Like there's a purpose for every single piece that's in there. And I think it helps to locate yourself in the broader struggle and your place in the broader movement, and also kind of takes away the pride or the onus that you feel like you have to be at the center of the movement, that like everyone plays a part, and that we can all move forward for a better future.
Thank you, Jenny. Okalani, I think you wanted to say something.
I think the internet may have frozen at her end because the picture's not moving. Okay. We lost.
So I think, yeah, she's gone. I think we are almost done with the question and answer round because we have run out of our time frame, and also the fact that we have so much more to come. I mean, not so much, but few other things. So please don't leave the room right now. Thank all the panelists here who've been here with the amazing work that they are doing, and to all the attendants who have had so much to learn from the panelists in this webinar. So with this, I would end the the panel session, and we'll give the floor back to Giv to continue with our consultative celebration. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. It was absolutely inspiring. And thank you, Alima, for being such a wonderful moderator. I would like to invite Humairi to summarize the session and also say thank you to the speakers on behalf of us. And this will be followed by a video for a regional call for action for climate change. So I'll pass the floor to Humairi. Thank you.
Do you hear me? Yep.
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you so much,
Thank
Gab,
you.
for giving me the floor. So thanks everyone for attending CSW 66th session today. I hope the webinar was helpful and inspiring for everyone in this room. So to summarize the discussion, here are the main talking points in climate actions we discussed today. So we discussed or we covered in today's webinar that nearly half of the global population is now highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. That includes everything from rising sea level, droughts, and more frequent and more intense weather events that threaten lives, livelihoods, and homes. And also we covered the domestic violence, economic fall down, and gender violence, food and water insecurity, and mental health such as depression and anxiety are all among the negative impact of climate changes. And also we covered that heat waves, droughts, typhoons, hurricanes they all have caused mass destructions all around the world. And also we covered the reason behind why women and girls are disproportionately affected by the climate changes. And also the importance of raising awareness to face climate crisis through online education, fellowships, youth and women empowerment and green projects. Also creating more green jobs such as upcycling clothes and wastes to face climate crisis. And also we covered the importance of women leadership in climate change, promoting education in climate action, and teaching youths the cause and effect of this crisis. Also, we covered the climate change that, and its gender, the impact on livelihoods, that there were three major sectors that that have been affected throughout the centuries, such as the agriculture and forestry sector, the manufacturing sector, and also the wholesale and retail trade sectors. And also, we covered that how to make effective strategies and tools to form climate policy and assist our government, businesses, and civil societies in implementing those policies to face climate crisis and build resilience for the well-being of everyone on the planet. And also, we covered the three recommendations from each of our speakers on how to prevent climate changes. The major recommendations that I have noted was more women should be included in decision-making role. There should be a meaningful participation of youth and raising awareness about climate crisis so that youths, women, everybody on the earth can take action for climate changes. And also inclusive policy approach such as intersectional and gender transformative approach to address the climate changes. And also there is a need for a strong sectoral policies. And also CSW have to catalyze the collective intelligence in order to face the climate changes. And finally, the collective environmental experiment to address the climate changes. So at the end, I'd like to thank our speakers on behalf of Asian Pacific NGO CSW 66th session organizing team from the bottom of our heart for taking time from their busy schedule to be the guest speaker at our webinar. Your presence and wise words helped magnify our cause in the best possible way. All thanks to your enlightening words that inspired so many people here in this room. We cannot thank you enough for gracing our webinar and invigorating all our spirits and making everyone feel at home. We look forward to our next interaction in the future, wishing you all the best for your future endeavors. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I apologize, I skipped a poem, a video poem section. So I would like to go back and share with you a poem. And I apologize if I pronounce the poet's name wrong, but the poet's name is Edgar Chilome, who is going to perform The Archive of Our Relation. Thank you.
I admit, the mourning is constant. The names, the words, the whispers, colors, and textures that were lost, persecuted, poisoned, disinherited, extracted, cut down, shaved, kidnapped, unclaimed, and forgotten. An endless war. I to report. My silence has not saved me. Yet running water calls spirits hidden in me, carefully waiting for me to quiet the mind, so they may wake me right on time to witness the great expanse, a dance so tender it gently wakes the sun. In gratitude, the sun rises, offers its power so that we may see all that has been done and all that is yet to come. In humility and courage, I rise, offer my power so that I may see all that has been done and you who has yet to become. Tumalsinu, may the sun always shine on you. A prayer weaved by the most precious parts of me. A breath, the most potent offering to our becoming. I report. The water, the earth, the seeds, and the grace of a dancing sky remain a pure reflection. The wealth of our inheritance, the heart of our connection, the archive of our relation, if we so choose to co-conspire, if we so choose to remember. Agua es vida. Water is life. We are the water, and remembering has offered us our lives. Love letters bloom beautiful in anticipation of you. Travel guide to the ancient futures that are due, living memories of gestation and labor, humble testimonies conspired in your favor. You see, more than hope, we hold a deep knowing. All creation moves in circle. All that has once been dead is reborn, the breaking of the seed, a necessary violence, forgiveness, a necessary blooming, resistance, a necessary rooting, rebuilding, a defining act of courage, letting go, a radical act of love. I too agree with the trees. I do not shy away from the darkness, nor do I fear the wind. I remember the water and take root in the memory of you, the living archive of our relation, a sweet and sacred confirmation that we are still alive.
So wonderful. What a beautiful poem. So now on to the next part. I would like to invite Nelima again for the regional call for action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gib. As we heard from all the, sorry, I think problem with the Wi-Fi. So, you know, we have heard from the panelists. Yeah.
Hello, sorry, you cut off for a bit. Nelima? Hello?
Okay, so you can hear me now, right?
Yes, can hear you now. Yes.
So I will take a long time because I think there's a problem with Wi-Fi. So I don't know that, you know, the impact of climate change, you know, how everyone is advocating for it. So the next video is about, you know, what we, the working committee of NGO CSW, is doing in our personal and professional level, you know, to act for climate change. So I would like to request you to play the video.
Hi everyone, my name's Carol Shaw, and for CSW, my commitment to CSW 66 is to push for the area of loss and damage through environmental disasters to be reflected and recognised. And I want to stand with my sisters from the Pacific region to work on systems change, not climate change.
I'm Suveksha Rana, Executive Director of a women-led organization called Sati, working on violence against women and girls. On a professional and organizational level, I commit for a gender-responsive climate action plan, for which we've started working with women collective groups from grassroots levels to empower them, build their leadership so that they can voice for their own participation in local planning related to climate action plan and disaster risk reduction. We've also been organizing Women's Fair every year to provide a platform for young entrepreneurs and home-based workers to showcase and sell their products, which are mostly recycled. And on a personal level, I commit to reduce the use of plastic bags. No to plastic will be my motto. Thank you.
Kia ora. I'm the Deputy Mayor, Helen Swales of Uphat City Council. I bring to the table a voice of influence. Every decision that we will make at the table, I will ensure that it has a green or a climate change lens over it. That is going to be my climate change action for CSW 66.
My climate action is to work on my diet and make it healthier and more environmentally friendly. Therefore, I consume less meat and dairy products, which is one of the biggest ways to reduce our environmental impact on the planet. Instead, I use more fresh and seasonal products that is grown locally to help reduce the carbon emissions from transportation, preservation, and prolonged refrigeration. Thank you.
Professionally, being an architect, I practice and promote green architecture, and I encourage my fellow architects to find green solutions in the construction industry. Being part of different organizations, I encourage the business and professional women to find green solution to their businesses. And personally, I try my best to avoid fast fashion and makeups and packaged goods so that we don't leave behind carbon footprint. Thank you.
In the hotel and factory business that I am in, we use energy efficient equipment. This includes factory machines such as packaging, air conditioning, chillers, and we also install solar cells to run these businesses. We also have a strong waste reduction and pollution reduction systems such as water treatment systems before releasing the water back into the environment or the city. Personally, I use a lot of recycled goods, solar cells at my own home. I scuba dive to take the trash away, plant new coral, and of course try to use more public transport or hybrid car and try to eat less meat.
Hello everyone, it's me Dilnawase. To cut down the carbon footprints, personally I have been using the local products from local markets, and professionally in the workplaces I try my best to use the sustainable products so that we can eliminate the carbons. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And we all try to do our bits for the environment. So that is the regional cooperation from our team. So I think we're coming to an end of our session. I'd like to say thank you to all the speakers and all the participants again for coming to join us. A reminder that we have upcoming other regional events throughout the next 2 weeks online. So we really hope to see you there. If you want any more information, you can check our Facebook page, the website, or see the CSW website. And as we know that as women, and also some gentlemen here, we come together to empower each other. And one of the things we do best, through, I think we have everybody around the globe, which is amazing. We come together and we create a beautiful space for all of us. And on occasion, we dance together. So in closing, we want to share this beautiful Japanese style dancing with you. And thank you again for coming to join the event. We really enjoyed having you here, and please enjoy the video, and we'll see you in the next 2 weeks during the CSW. Have a beautiful day, night, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all very much for joining us. We look forward to sharing some space during CSW 66 with you. Please go to our website or NGO CSW for the full program of CSW, and it's around the empowerment of women and girls. And there are many, many offerings. So thank you all very much for spending the afternoon with us. Kei kitea.
Thank you.